98% of her crew died in a single winter night. Start with the survival function. Total men embarked, roughly 1,968. Survivors found alive, 36. That is a survival rate of about 1.8% and a mortality of 98.2%. If you stood on her decks at dusk, your chance of seeing dawn was 1 in 54. Over roughly 3 hours of violent contact, that yields more than 10 deaths per minute, 600 per hour, a rate curve that accelerates as compartments flood and power drops. By the last 20 minutes, survival was effectively 0.0. This is cohort arithmetic, not sentiment. One ship, one night, one outcome. This is what an actuarial table looks like when steel meets ice and radar meets shellfire. Here is the brutal mathematics. A hull of more than 32,000 tons standard and nearly 38,000 tons loaded, driven at over 31 knots on trial, representing hundreds of thousands of man-hours and tens of thousands of training days. If the build cost is benchmarked against contemporary capital ships at well over 100 million Reichsmarks, you can apportion per capita investment, north of 50,000 Reichsmarks per sailor's training, gear, and billet across 3 years. Return on that human capital in the final engagement. For every one man rescued, roughly 53 were lost, a ratio of 53 to 1. The shell fire that ended it consumed at most a few hundred 15-inch shells and a few dozen torpedoes. The economic asymmetry is violent. What else could that money have bought? Grain for 1 million rations for 100 days, steel for 10,000 field guns, coal for a winter's heating for 100,000 homes. Instead, in one December night of 1943, it purchased 36 men alive and 1,932 men dead. Break the risk into variables. Threat 1. Gunnery. British heavy guns at 15 inches produced armor penetration at ranges of more than 10 miles. Attribute 35% of the fatality curve to shell fire. Primary battery hits that wrecked radar, smashed turrets, and opened compartments to the sea. Threat 2. Torpedoes. Multiple destroyer attacks contributed at least 40% to the terminal phase, with spreads of 8 to 12 weapons per run and a cumulative probability of strike approaching 70% after 3 waves. Threat 3. Cold exposure, water at near freezing, wind at over 30 knots, air at below 0 degrees Celsius. Assign 15% of the deaths to hypothermia within 15 to 30 minutes of immersion. Threat 4. Mechanical failure and isolation. Once boilers were disrupted and speed fell from 30 to below 20 knots, tactical options collapsed. Give 10% to a cascade of power loss, steering damage, and the loss of destroyer screen early in the day. Within those buckets, micro-risks compound. A 0.8% chance of lethal fragment wound per major hit for any topside sailor. A 0.5% per minute hypothermia. Mortality once fully immersed. A 0.2% per minute flood trap risk for anyone below decks with jammed watertight doors. A 0.35 probability that a given torpedo spread would find a target even with evasive maneuvers. A 0.1 survival function once list exceeded 20 degrees, and pumps lost suction. Add in radar. Loss of set equals a 0.4 decrease in fire control effectiveness, and enemy radar adds a 0.4 increase in theirs, turning probabilities into certainties. Now, the impossibility mathematics. Speed is life, but speed is fuel and steam. And steam is boilers that fail when shock travels through rivets and tubes. Each hit reduces speed by 1 to 3 knots on average. After 3 major penetrations, the difference between 28 knots and 20 knots is the difference between staying beyond a destroyer's torpedo envelope and sitting squarely in it. Fire control is a feedback loop. Radar down by 1 set equals director blind by 1/3, which increases time to solution from 20 seconds to 60, during which enemy closing speed adds thousands of yards. Armor is a promise with limits. Belt of over 12 inches works at broadside angles, but at certain obliquities and ranges, the mathematics flips, and a 15-inch shell becomes a 30% penetrator. But here is what nobody talks about: the self-defeating geometry of survival equipment. Rafts stowed high require ladders. At more than 15 degrees of list, ladder traversal time triples, while smoke inhalation halves that time. Leap early, and you face 0 degrees water. Leap late, and you face vacuum where the deck used to be. The curve tends to 0. What did the men know? They knew enough to keep their own ledgers of fear. They say we are fast enough, but speed is numbers on paper. Shells are numbers in steel, wrote one petty officer in a pocketbook the week before the sortie. He was one of more than 1,000 men who had done more than 100 drills, practiced more than 50 damage control evolutions, and still faced an engagement where every 1 in 50 would live. I counted the rungs to the boat deck, 42 steps, and promised myself I would climb them in 10 seconds, recorded a young stoker, timing his breath in 4s, counting the seconds as if they were coins he could save. He had perhaps a 1 in 5 chance of making that climb once the lights went out. Once the list began, that chance fell to 1 in 20. "The cold is a machine," another sailor wrote. "It takes your fingers in 5 minutes, your arms in 10, and your thoughts after 15. It is a mortality curve. 5 for pain, 10 for paralysis, 15 for oblivion." They knew the odds shifted with every minute. Each new hit added a 0.1 to the next hit's chance of starting a fatal flood. Each torpedo wake raised the background probability of panic by 0.2. Each order shouted through a mask of smoke reduced comprehension by 30%. There was an anomaly, and it wore a human face seeking air. 36 men lived. A handful rode rafts. A few were pulled straight from black water by 2 enemy destroyers, hands numb after less than 10 minutes, core temperatures falling at 2 degrees per hour. Consider the 19-year-old machinist who had crawled through 2 watertight doors, one stuck at a 60% angle, and surfaced through a hatch that jammed on the last 6 inches. His survival path included 4 binary choices: left versus right, in smoke; up versus aft, in darkness; jump now versus wait; hold breath for 20 seconds or not. 4 coin flips yield 1 in 16. Add the external rescue chance of maybe 1 in 3 given enemy destroyers nearby. Multiply by the thermal survival chance of perhaps 1 in 5 after 15 minutes in near-freezing water, and you have 1 in 240. Yet there he was, one of 36, shivering, eyes open, repeating the names of 4 friends who did not surface. 2 ships did the saving, 1 on each quarter of the search box, half an hour apart, using 6 boats and hauling for more than 20 minutes. Sum the totals. 1 night, 1 battle, 1 ship erased, 1,932 men who never reached home. Families counted in hundreds, perhaps 800 fathers, more than 1,000 sons, dozens of brothers serving together. The arithmetic of achievement is equally stark. What was gained? The enemy removed 1 threat from 1 sea at the cost of a few hours, a few hundred shells, a few dozen torpedoes, and casualties measured in low tens. What was lost? Years of training counted in tens of thousands of days. Metal measured in tens of thousands of tons. Lives measured in the only measure that matters. Single units that cannot be replaced. The final truth is that the ledger balances only in blood. In December of 1943, under Polar Night, statistics became destiny. The math is undeniable. If you enjoyed this, tap like and subscribe. It really helps. And drop a quick comment telling us where you're watching from. The United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, or anywhere else in the world. Your reply helps the video reach more people just like you.